Hi, everybody. Welcome to Baggage Claim. Thanks for joining us.
I'm Julia. This is a show about hot topics in mental health in today's society.
And I'm Katrina. And just so you know, we will be talking about mental health on this show. And if you have any triggers, please know that there are links in the description below. With that, I think let's get started. Welcome, Blair. Blair, thanks for joining.
Hey, Blair.
We appreciate it.
Hey, Julia. Great to see you.
You too.
So tonight I kind of go ahead.
What were you going to say?
Oh, tonight, I just wanted to talk to you guys about what was on the top of my mind. And those things were like George Floyd, the 47, mass shootings that have happened in the past month. It's 420, so happy 420. I totally forgot about that. And maybe we can get into true crime. Just saying. So we got a lot to talk about.
I mean, the George
It's always
Floyd
a
case,
good time for true crime.
That's true. Yeah.
You notice how true crime is almost always suburban people? It's never like someone in a bad neighborhood got shot. The true crime is very specific type of crime. It's never.
Well, the kind that I watch. Yeah.
There's never drive-by shootings in true crime.
No, sometimes.
You know what I mean?
But it is in like suburbia.
Yeah. If the drive-by shooting is not where it's supposed to be, that's what it gets in true crime.
And it's the worst thing that's ever happened to this community.
Community is shocked. And they slow-mo on the family portrait ripping in half.
Anyway, sorry, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Okay, so I don't have a lot of information on this. I just know what's happened recently with the hearing, but George Floyd. I feel like it's been a long time to get to where we are now.
Thank God, first of all, thank God that the verdict was what it was. I was really scared that it was going to be something else.
Yeah. But my question though is does it matter? Does this one verdict matter?
It doesn't change anything. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't change the systemic racism and corruption of the police force and these unjust systems that we have set up in this country. But I think that this verdict had to be what it was, or we would devolve into chaos.
Yeah, the whole idea that you live with police that are criminals. It's one thing for the criminals to be criminals, but if your police are also criminals, then you don't really have much of a society. So it's very important that people at least have some faith, not maybe all faith, but some faith in the rule of law. And if they don't, then you have to expect that, if people don't think your police are trustworthy, they're not going to follow any law, because why would they? It doesn't make any sense at that point.
And even I hate when people say, but that's not the majority, that don't do that and follow the law. Well, the majority of those people aren't going to win anything against the police force. You are tied to a union that is with iron gates.
Historically, the prosecutors have had a very cozy relationship with the police because they have to.
Yeah.
Because it's they depend on the police to testify in their trials, so they're not going to want to upset the police department by prosecuting one of their own. So they have a very, very, very large tendency to sweep things out of the rug. And when they do prosecute them, it's very hard to convict because people see police officers in a certain light. In this case, you had multiple eyewitnesses, full video, audio. You were able to see the whole experience from multiple angles. And it took that level of evidence to convict.
But it's still, the whole thing's such a joke. It took that level of evidence, but we still had a 4-week trial for a murder that everyone saw. Yeah. I saw online someone say, how do you know America is a failed state? Because we just had this lengthy trial for something that we all witnessed.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. It
It
feels
was completely
crazy.
unnecessary.
And hey,
Yes,
Dexter.
totally crazy.
Yeah, it's not necessarily like something you should expect in normal situations. But yeah, Desdar says absolute power corrupts absolutely. I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
We instill these officers with a sense of power, and we're then surprised that they abuse that power. But that, I think, is part of the problem, is they should not feel like they are above the regular citizens. They should feel like they are accountable to the citizens. That's the point of the police. It shouldn't be the citizens better do what I say or they get hurt. It should be the police better follow what the citizens want or they're going to jail because they're criminals, and that's not okay. So yeah, we need to shift that power balance back into the hands of the people.
So do you think, Katrina, like, does something like this affect your mental health?
Yeah, I think, of course. But it's compounded by other things, right? Like, I know the police is corrupt. I mean, I know these things are happening, and not just happening to George Floyd, but look at what's happened recently. Like, I think there's been two recent, like within the past 2 weeks, new police shootings. I think
Yeah.
of kids. It's just everywhere. It's just hard to get out of your head.
You remember, you go back to the Fruitvale Station shooting of Oscar Grant,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember having a conversation about it then, where that was one of the cases where they shot the guy and claimed, "Oh, I accidentally got my taser." Very similar to a recent case where the taser was the excuse for manslaughter. And I remember in that case, I said, you know, I really hope that the officer is convicted, because if he's not, it's going to set a precedent for people to expect more like this, and it's going to make them very upset. So the fact that people, when you go years without holding anyone accountable, it gets worse. And that's what happened here. Yeah.
And this is what's happening with body cams on. I mean, imagine what was happening before body cams existed.
No, exactly. And even body cams, like, they're turning them off, and they're, you know, corruption will just find corruption and like create it, I feel like.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I mean, when you, the whole thing is, you know, I think there's that quote where somebody said racism isn't getting worse, it's getting filmed. And that's true, for sure. And you also have, you have people who are filming these things for the first time, but like, also, I think we didn't really, up until definitely until 2015, nobody was even tracking that the police were shooting this many people, that they were killing people, that there were, you know, there was no database, there was no records. It was just all kept quiet and swept under the rug, and people were specifically asked not to record the data, which right there, that should be, you know, a big red flag. If you're in a democracy and there's information that they don't want out there, like, that should be a big red flag. That's not good information. So yeah, it wasn't even until recently we even had a scope of what the problem was.
Blows my mind. And I just feel like it gets worse and worse and worse. What? Put it on.
Okay. Desdar has a comment here. What do you guys think about that?
Hollywood has also been doing
Propaganda. You know, like propaganda.
Thank you. Propaganda for decades. Gave them excuses. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, they gave drugs to their police force to give out to the community. Like,
oh, well, I mean, you know, you're talking about Vice, or you talking about Rampart, or you talking about?
I mean, exactly.
But Julia, I know you've worked in the entertainment industry. A lot of us have. What's your feeling about Hollywood and its role in? How do you feel about 2005 Best Picture winner Crash at this point?
I was never a Crash fan.
Me neither.
I was never on board with Crash. I hated that movie.
So stupid.
I mean, talk about whitewashing.
Yeah.
But that when that movie, I hate movies that don't. This is such a what's the word? We're veering off topic, but just to say this, I hate movies that discount their audience's intelligence And Crash, I felt like, treated its audience like we were these stupid kids that wouldn't see these twists and turns coming, and he's going to end up to be her, mom from this other dad who was the cop who sexually assaulted her. and the whole film was just like that. It was so awful. But as far as propaganda, I love that term. I'm going to steal that. Yeah, I think that Hollywood has been making cops the good guys for years, and very sympathetic characters, as far as always being these noble steeds, and really that all the bad guys are out there, and here are all the good guys.
I think I could count on one hand the number of entertainment industry stories that were honest about what the police department was and what it was doing. I think, when you look at TV, the only honest police show was The Shield, which came out 15, 20 years ago at this point. But that was one of the few honest shows where they based it on the Rampart scandal in LAPD, where the cops, people in the community started to realize the cops themselves were a violent gang unit. And they were graffitiing things and executing people and selling crack, and they were doing all sorts of crazy things. And they realized the LAPD actually had this vision that was just a full-on functional street gang, period. And that was the story of it. Rampart, I haven't seen the movie, but I know that's probably about the same topic. Yeah. And there's certainly not many. It happens every now and then after the LA riots, this movie Unlawful Entry came out about kind of a psycho stalker cop. But that was, more what if you were a suburban person and the cop came after you? Very true crimey. So yeah, it didn't necessarily have that.
You gotta get
the audience. Yeah. I can't think of too much about. Hollywood is usually a reaction to culture figuring stuff out, not usually the pioneer of this stuff. There's, movies that have definitely thought about this, but it wasn't. Most, by and large, are kind of the Lethal Weapon, Law and Order stuff.
Yeah.
You guys know Hollywood better than I do.
Well, thank God the verdict was what it was.
No, Bones.
You were in Bones, yeah. That's where the girl touches the dead bodies. That's one of those shows.
I don't know. I've never seen it.
I haven't either.
I know.
Did you watch at least the episode you were in?
No. No. Okay, I was just trying. I was in college. I was desperate. I needed money. And that's how you could get quick, easy cash. Honestly.
Selling out.
Go down to Central Casting, Anyway, yeah. So back to, I don't know, George Floyd, did we even kind of wrap that up? Do you think this mattered? Do you think it's enough?
It's not enough. It could be a beginning to something if we choose to allow that. I don't think it's necessarily a beginning of anything. I think that remains to be seen what people will do with this. But there's a huge issue, a huge problem, and this is one tiny sliver of justice that was served.
The system itself needs reform. It's not like Derek Chauvin was behind all these horrible crimes, and now that we've got him, it's all over. It's not really like that. There's a system that has built up and put power in the hands of people who are very flawed individuals and trained them a certain way to think a certain way and given them the power to kill. And those people, not just in America, but in other countries too, often abuse that power, just like, every military, every religion, we see the same thing, right? People abuse the power they're given. So you don't want to really...
They always...
You shouldn't really put that much power in a group that's that unaccountable. It just shouldn't. You just never do that.
That's the thing. It's would you... I would do everything I could to not have to call the police in any situation, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the last thing I would want is to get
Minimize,
police involved. So if I'm thinking that, like, yeah.
As a young white woman,
Yeah.
if you're
Living
feeling that way,
Yeah.
who knows what people of other ethnicities are feeling and experiencing.
Exactly.
I mean, you can go to societies where there's, they're so racially homogenous, you don't even have much in the way of ethnic tensions. And what you find there is the cops abusing and killing the underclass. So there's always going to be a target for that. If you give people power to abuse, they're going to find a target for that abuse. And I think the solution here is to look very critically at how is this officer how was no one able to stop him while this was happening? You had paramedics there, you had street, but no one felt safe stopping him.
Yeah.
So what does that tell you when you're literally watching him murder a man and you do not feel comfortable to take action against the man murdering because of his power? If this was just a regular person on the street killing a person, the crowd would have intervened. The crowd would have been able to do something. They would have stopped him. But when they have the badge and the gun, nothing you can do about it because you know that you'll get killed too. So that's a different level of power. Here, Desda has a comment about Japan. I know here in Japan, cops have been catching a lot of heat for covering up crimes to keep Japan's crime actively artificially low to the masses, like passing off homicides as suicides. Oh, that's interesting.
Wow. That's really interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of, I guess, what these different law enforcement's role is in some way suppression of social tendencies or suppression of information or suppression of, an ethnicity. Like, we're not going to say the country's name because they are really pernicious now on YouTube, but there's a certain country that Disney filmed Mulan in. They put people on trains and they ship them away for bad reasons, and they don't like to be talked about.
You have no evidence.
Yeah.
So what about these mass shootings? What are your thoughts on those?
Oh my gosh. Okay, when I saw this headline last week that there's been 47 mass shootings in the last month, I was floored. And there's been more since then. So it's like, I just couldn't believe it. I'm making off because I remember Columbine. We were talking about this earlier because I was like, before Columbine, what was mass shootings like? Like, what did it look like in our history? Because I remember Columbine so vividly and so well, and it has escalated since then, to now this, which is just, it blew my mind. It blew my mind. Do any of you feel like you're not safe to go anywhere anymore? Like, is that just?
I feel like Disney not gonna.
Yeah,
you know how good that security is. It's like,
but like, okay, that's like a small area. I'm talking about like, just in life, like,
yeah,
these people are just dying, just doing daily activities and being gunned down. I mean, it's crazy.
I mean, we were talking about. I remembered from when I was a kid. I don't know, Julia, you might remember this. Do you remember the Luby's Cafeteria Massacre?
No.
So this was in the 80s. I can't remember when, but somebody went into a Luby's cafeteria and killed like 20 some people. That was a shocking big deal. So big that as a child, I knew about it and it was like memorable. Now I can't even remember what happened last week in terms of mass shootings because there's so many pile upon up that,
it makes us all numb to them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like I remember there was a grocery store. I remember that was one and a FedEx one, but I don't remember the details of any of them.
Yeah.
No, they all run together. It's just like, oh, another one. It doesn't even register anymore as like a serious event. It's just, or a shocking event. It's not shocking.
It's not shocking.
It's just
it's just
Tuesday. Yeah.
Yeah. It was like, oh, another one.
And there's this bill in the, it just passed the Texas House and now it's going to the Senate. This bill to make it legal to have no permit carry laws where you can carry your gun without a permit. And that would be legal. And that's what we're doing in response to these 47 mass shootings. That's our next step.
Yeah.
Is to make it even easier for people to arm themselves.
Yeah.
I don't think that, I think this is not something that liberals like to hear, but realistically, there is nothing that can put the genie back in the bottle as far as guns in America. There are way more guns than people here, and we aren't going to be able to undo that in our lifetime. So we better come up with some strategy that doesn't
Around
involve
it.
the restriction, because it's just not possible at this point to restrict. But
There's like 2 guns for every person in the United States.
I don't think the guns themselves are the
that's
thing
okay.
in the sense that I was showing you that case. This is an American tradition that goes back to over 100 years ago, the Bath School Massacre,
Oh yeah.
where this guy, he blew up a school full of children, and then shot the principal and himself, or I can't remember how it went down, but he killed ended up 40 some people in this massacre. This was a mass shooting / bombing from over a century ago in the United States. And if you look at the perpetrator in that case, there were events that triggered it, of course, and you have an individual who's born with certain sociopathic characteristics and then put into a situation where they feel trapped. And in his case, it was he wanted to have power, so he tried to run for office. He lost it, and then as a consequence of that, he didn't have a salary, and his farm was foreclosed on. So now he was going to lose everything. Now, I think with part of this, there's this certain alienation that happens. And I think that contributes a hell of a lot to how people interact and how they feel so cold-blooded towards each other. But it's not necessarily, there's no simple fix, unfortunately, for this one.
No.
It just raises my anxiety so much just thinking about it. And like you said, Katrina, wondering where you can even go. Is it safe? Am I going to get shot? All this extra worry, just affecting our anxiety levels.
You just feel like you always have to be alert. I mean, you can never put your guard down for 1 second. Only in Disney.
I mean, but, I don't think, that may be true, but it's not possible to live that way. I think
no, it's not.
you're going to have to accept that in America, when you go outside, there's massive risk.
Yeah, of course.
Not you're definitely going to see something, but more in a long enough timeline in your lifetime, you're likely to encounter something. I've had friends who survived mass shootings, and, I'm sure you guys probably know somebody who survived something kind of like that or on that level. And I think you just kind of assume you're going to have a brush with it. And when you do, you hope that you have a cool head and you're ready for it.
Yeah. I mean, you definitely can't live your life not living your life. But it just does make you think a little bit.
Yeah. I don't know what, Blair, you're saying you can't put the genie back in the bottle. What would you say? What type of solutions do you think would be feasible?
So I think the fundamental issue is going to come down to community, right? So does the community usually have a sense of who these people are and that they're a threat before they actually act? Yes, they do. The community does. Now, they're not the same thing as law enforcement, but there is a way I think that the community can be empowered to help deal with this a lot better than it has right now, where it's sort of well, that's not my problem. That's for someone else to deal with. And I think we can find a way to I mean, there's so many steps that would have to happen for this to change. And I don't think it's, I think it's unrealistic to expect that any of those steps would happen. I think the most realistic step is they're going to be we've got this cartridge is now banned. Yay, cartridge is banned. And it'll be like that. And they'll be this is a victory. This cartridge has been banned. And then, a year from now, there'll be another horrific thing that we can't even fathom. They'll be we've got an entire brand. We got an entire brand off the market. And then, they'll go back and forth on that. That'll get repealed and that'll go on for years. I think we need to just learn to live with this as the new normal. That was the conversation I definitely had about this a couple of years ago, where people were oh, come on, these mass shootings, this is, a trend, this will stop. And it's now I think we need to be prepared that this is just going to be how life is, because we aren't fixing the fundamental things that contribute to that. So that's where I've been at, where, you just figure out how to live with it and how to adapt to it.
Sad.
Sad.
What are you going to do? Are you going to smoke some weed because it's 420?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That's what we can do to forget.
Yes. Drown ourselves.
Yes, it is 420.
Happy 420.
The most exciting day of the year normally. Did it this year? No.
Yeah, I think it's
Is anyone celebrating it?
Yes.
Are you celebrating it?
Yes.
There you go.
And as you should. Like, if you enjoy the recreational use of, the stuff, like, yeah.
It's definitely
I don't
better
know
for
what
you
I
than
can
alcohol.
say on here.
Like,
It's so much better than alcohol.
I know a lot of people are drinking too much in quarantine. I've talked to you, and I know a lot of people are. So,
Are you talking to them right now?
no, but I mean, I know somebody out there is going to be like, yeah, it's true. Definitely, if you are, I think over the age of probably 20 something and you're still drinking a lot, you should definitely consider switching to something more safe for your body, like THC, because man, that alcohol in a long enough timeline is going to wreck your life.
It does bad things.
Yeah. So yeah, I think 420 is a good day.
Take it from me.
Yeah.
Take it. Yes.
It's a lot. I mean, there's a lot to recommend about 420.
Absolutely. It's a great holiday. And I'll call it that.
Pot has the worst effect on me. It is like, I can't smoke it. It makes me crazy. It makes me so paranoid and so, like, I get really mad at myself. And I just get really upset and like angry. And no. And I tried it a bunch of times because I was like, it must have just been the type I was smoking. Yeah. And I tried different types and I tried it at different times in different situations and it was awful. So I just had to give up finally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you don't want that bad experience. Like
it's not, it's not for everybody for sure. There are people, especially when you're dealing with, that is the biggest risk case with THC is going to be people with mental health issues. Pot can literally be a trigger for schizophrenia.
Oh yeah.
And I don't mean trigger like, oh, this makes me think I have schizophrenia. It's like, no, it can actually set off schizophrenia if you have schizophrenia. So for some people, pot can actually be very, very dangerous. And so you have to, again, treat it with care and respect and not just jump in with all your gusto on that one. If you have mental health issues, definitely talk to your doctor before you go down to the pot shop and buy some.
Yeah. Don't make the mistake that I did. The first time I smoked, I was with some people where they were watching the movie Seven. You know that movie? Seven with Brad Pitt?
Oh my God. That's not okay.
And I kept forgetting what had happened from one scene to the next. I would forget what had just happened. So I was like, why is this happening? Why is this guy wrapped in barbed wire? What is going on? I don't understand. And I was freaking out.
Oh boy. Yeah.
Like if you're in a bad place, and even if you're not necessarily struggling with your mental health normally, but if you're in like a bad place in your life and you smoke a lot or maybe take an edible or something, it can cause like a hellishly introspective bad trip inside your brain. Like there's this columnist for, I think it was the Wall Street Journal.
Oh my God. I was going to bring this up.
Maureen Dowd. Yeah. And when Colorado first legalized it, she flew to Colorado. This woman is probably like, she was in her late 50s, early 60s at the time.
Yeah.
She goes to a pot shop, buys this big fucking brownie, like huge dose of THC. And then you read this column that she writes afterwards, and she's in her hotel room for like 12 hours having the worst experience of her life, analyzing every terrible, awful decision she's ever made and feeling like this is going to be the rest of her life is this hellish introspective trip. And she's writing this, very cautious warning about this. And everyone after that put up billboards in Colorado with like a photo that looked like Maureen Dowd in a hotel that said, "Know your dosage. Do not take edibles unless you know what you're doing."
Yeah, that's a great story.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite.
It can be bad. It can be a very bad, thing on people.
Absolutely. And it is 100% not for everybody. And everybody has a different reaction. So keep that in mind, people.
If you have mental health issues and you want to try it for the first time, do it around people you trust in small doses who can protect you if something happens.
Absolutely.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
Really not just with pot. That's probably any drug.
Any drug.
Yeah.
Anyone out there who wants to smoke salvia, you should have a sitter.
So Katrina, you forgot that it was 420. When did you remember?
Yeah. Okay, so I remember today. I was teaching my little first grader, and she was writing the date, and I was saying, okay, it's 4-20. Wait, what? And then I calculated that. Yeah, it was just great. It was like, and then I sent a text to everybody. Oh my God, it's 420.
With your first grader, that's priceless.
It was priceless.
Oh my God.
She'll never know.
I mean, at some point, she's
Someday.
she's probably going to hear about it when she's older, right? I would assume.
It's a good story.
There's the story of 420 is like one of those big urban legends in America. Like who started it? And there's the claim that it goes to some high school in like Texas, I think. And that it was because that was the time they got out of class and they'd go behind the school and smoke. I think that's the story. But when I heard that, I was like, well, actually, high school, that's a bad time to be smoking because your brain is not finished development. You should really wait until college to engage in any sort of hallucinogens, illicit substances, anything like that, because when you do it before your brain's fully formed, that can lead to mental health issues. Yeah. That can lead to mental health issues that crop up later in life.
All this good advice today. Wow.
I'm learning so much.
I know. I think the last topic I kind of want to jump into is true crime. And we've talked about it on the show before, I think. And I really want to jump into it because I don't know if like I'm really sick in the head or if this is normal. So I love true crime. I watch it like nonstop. I love watching, like, I'll watch the same story over and over again with different YouTubers. Like, it's all good. I love it. But I think that I love most is like, I love falling asleep to it. Like at night, it's like a comforting thing that like puts me to sleep. Is that like morbid? Crazy.
It's kind of morbid.
A little bit. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Julie, how would you feel if you lived with someone who went to sleep listening to stories about people being dismembered?
That's like my worst nightmare. So I would feel awful because I am a scaredy cat and I can't handle anything like that. So that would not work for me. It's a good thing we're not married, Katrina.
I know.
Yeah, they're extreme cases you do.
And now I feel really bad. I feel really bad.
Well, I've done horror films, so it's not as, I can handle some of it. For me, I'm someone who loves horror, but I'm actually always shocked by people being into true crime simply because I'm like, but that involved real people really getting hurt. It's one thing if it's like a fantasy of, Freddy Krueger kills people in their dreams and he turns into like a monster or whatever. Okay, I know that's not real, but there's something that's always bothered me about blurring that line and enjoying the story of someone who really went through extreme suffering and died.
But it's more the mystery. Like, it's not like I want to hear about somebody being stabbed to death 1,000,000 times and what that looks like. But I like the mystery of like, who did it? Are we going to find out who did it is what I want to know. I know.
Don't you always find out?
No. There's many cold cases out there.
Oh.
I don't like that, though. I don't like when they don't solve it. When it's unsolved mysteries, I am so not interested. I'm like, so you're saying there's no ending? Boy, I really don't care. Except for with the exception of the one we watched the other night about D.B. Cooper.
Oh, yeah, that was good.
D.B. Cooper, the skyjacker in the 70s who hijacked a plane with a bomb.
No.
Got $250,000, flew the plane over the woods in Washington, jumped out of the plane with a parachute, and they never found him. And
He's
never found the money.
Only hijacker to ever get away.
That's
really?
That's an interesting case to me. But the documentary was exploring all the different people who claim they know who it is. He was someone in their family, or they confessed to, in their deathbed that they were DB. And the documentary ultimately ended up looking at why are there so many people who have this big hole in their lives that they want to fill with this mythical robber. And what does that hole in their life represent? And
Yeah.
that's usually there's
And do
trauma.
they really believe it, or are they just saying
Yes.
They do
Oh, no.
absolutely
Really believe it?
100.
believe
They
it.
say
So we're talking about people with mental illness.
No.
no.
I mean, you know, there's a mental component to it for sure, but it's like in many cases they maybe are just completely telling the truth, and the person did tell them this, but that person may have wanted to make themselves into my life meant something when it did, right? And in the sense of like DB Cooper's a folk hero because if you look at the time, America was in a real economic slump. Like, you know, I think we are in one now, but that time people didn't know where it was going or what to do about it. And this guy had done, or in some cases, they're not even sure it was a guy. There's a whole theory that it was trans woman. That's a really great, interesting that it was a trans woman who was able, this was the transition. She stole the money, transitioned out, and she lived the rest of her life out in her, you know, new identity in the same area. That was one of the theories. But yeah, I think with a lot of people, it captured their imagination, and they love the idea of someone who stuck it to the system and got away with it. You know, they said, I'm going to do this thing. They organized it properly. They jumped out of an airplane. They took all these risks, and somehow they walked away. And that inspires, I think, the imagination of people saying, I could overcome all this. I could just get on a plane and get all this money and I'd be good. So I think that gives people this kind of lottery hope. That's part of it.
Sort of wish fulfillment.
Yeah. Oh, that was good. It was a good one. If you like true crime or any crime stories, it's a good one. I think like that's it for that. Like, anybody else have anything they want to bring up or anything that's on your mind?
Blair, do you?
Well, actually, there's something I wanted to ask both of you. Like, well, what do you think if I helped you set up your own channel simply because I'm unable to change the name, and this still says Common Club, which again I can't get into details on the air about, but something very, very terrible happened there. So Common Club is no more, sadly, and the videos are gone. But you guys can have your own channel, and I could put the videos back up on that channel with your own branding and something like that. If you notice, because we were off for so long, the YouTube algorithm has hammered us pretty hard. So, you know, at this point, you could launch a different one and get fresh viewers and stuff like that.
Sounds good.
Make sure to tell Desdar, though.
Yeah.
So he's not wondering where everybody went.
True that. We will, Desdar.
But yeah, that's just something to think about.
Yeah.
I think it could be good. I think we could push it forward and promote it pretty well.
Sounds good.
So just something to think about.
I love it. Yeah, thanks for joining. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you next week, 8 p.m.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Julia.
Bye.